Captain Ethan Drake stood at the edge of the landing platform, staring at the sprawling alien city below. The sky was a soft shade of teal, unlike anything he had ever seen on Earth. Crystal towers stretched high, reflecting light in every direction. Bridges and pathways glowed faintly, and flying vehicles zipped silently through the air. It was beautiful, almost magical, yet Ethan kept his calm as always. Humans had a way of adapting, of finding balance even in places that seemed impossible. The Valerie had been expecting him. The alien race was known across the galaxy for their intelligence, their technology, and their beauty, at least by their standards. Their queen, Lyra, was famous not just for leading her people, but for her appearance, which the Valari considered perfect. She was graceful, tall, with skin that shimmered faintly in the light. Every gesture she made seemed to flow like water. And yet Ethan had heard something unusual about her, something that made him curious. "Captain Drake," a soft, melodic voice said, interrupting his thoughts. A Valari attendant floated toward him. Their bodies seemed almost weightless, moving as if the air itself carried them. "The Queen will see you now." Ethan nodded politely. "Thank you." He followed the attendant through the city, noting the elegant architecture and the quiet hum of energy flowing through every building. The Valari had achieved things humans had only dreamed of: cities that healed themselves, energy sources that never ran out, and communication devices that could translate any language instantly. Yet despite all their achievements, there was something missing, something Ethan felt humans often had in abundance: warmth, humor, and a certain unpredictability. Finally, they reached the royal chamber. The doors opened to reveal Lyra, sitting upon a throne of transparent crystal. She looked at Ethan carefully, her eyes studying him as if she could see through his very being. "Welcome to Valara, Captain Drake," she said. Her voice was smooth, melodic, and carried an authority that made the room feel quiet in respect. "I am Queen Lyra." Ethan bowed slightly, a gesture that felt natural even among alien customs. "Your Highness, it is an honor to meet you. I come in peace, seeking understanding and cooperation between our worlds." Lyra nodded, her hands resting lightly on the arms of her throne. "And yet I wonder, what does a human truly see when he looks at us?" Ethan tilted his head slightly, intrigued. "I see a civilization that has achieved much. I see beauty, yes, but also intelligence, culture, and care for your people." Lyra's lips curved slightly, but not in the usual expression of pride. She stood and moved to a reflective crystal panel at the side of the room. Her reflection shimmered in the light. She studied herself quietly, then murmured almost to herself, "Why call me gorgeous? I'm ugly." Ethan froze for a moment, surprised. He had expected many things from an alien queen, but not this. "Ugly?" he asked gently. Lyra's eyes met his, almost shyly. "Yes. All my life I have been told I am perfect, that I am beautiful. But I see flaws, small, subtle, yet always there. Perhaps it is vanity or perhaps it is truth. I cannot tell." Ethan smiled quietly, not mockingly, but with a calm understanding. "Beauty is in many things, Your Highness. Sometimes it is in courage, sometimes it is in kindness, and sometimes it is simply in the way someone carries themselves." Lyra looked at him carefully, her expression unreadable. Humans were strange creatures. They did not always admire beauty the way Valari did. They did not judge by appearances alone. There was something about this human, something that made her feel a curious warmth. The attendants cleared the space around them, leaving just Ethan and Lyra. The palace itself seemed alive, the light reflecting off the walls like a soft, breathing presence. Ethan noticed the small details, the subtle patterns etched into the floor, the gentle hum of energy flowing through the crystal walls. This was not just a palace. It was a living creation built to reflect harmony and intelligence. "You are very different from other beings I've met," Lyra said finally, her voice quieter. "Humans, you do not seem impressed by appearances. You do not bow to beauty alone. You look deeper." Ethan shrugged lightly. "We notice many things, we adapt, and sometimes we simply appreciate honesty." Lyra's eyes softened. She had expected arrogance, perhaps fear, maybe even ridicule. Instead, she found calmness and genuine respect. She could feel it, a strange and new sensation. Perhaps this human was unlike any other visitor her world had ever received. "I have heard of your planet, Earth," Lyra said, her voice regaining its formal tone. "A world far from here, yet you managed to survive, to explore, to grow. How do you do it, human?" Ethan considered for a moment. We are not the strongest or the fastest. We do not have advanced technology like yours, but we have curiosity, courage, and each other. We learn from mistakes, we work together, and we never give up. Lyra nodded slowly. These words struck a chord within her. She had ruled for many cycles, and yet she had often doubted herself. Leadership was heavy, and perfection was a burden. Yet here was a human, calmly stating truths that resonated deeper than appearances or traditions. Perhaps there is more to humans than I imagined, Lyra said softly, almost to herself. Perhaps your kind sees things that we cannot. Ethan's smile remained gentle. He had learned long ago that listening often spoke louder than words. And now, as he stood in the presence of a queen who doubted herself despite her perfection, he realized that humans had a quality the Volari did not always possess: quiet confidence. The attendants returned, signaling that the audience was over, but Lyra gestured for them to wait. "Captain Drake," she said, her tone lighter than before, "I would like to show you our city. Perhaps you will see the beauty of Volara for yourself, beyond the crystal and the towers." Ethan nodded. "I would be honored." As they walked through the city, Ethan noticed the details others might miss: children playing on floating platforms, workers tending to glowing gardens, citizens exchanging ideas and knowledge freely. There was harmony here, a beauty that went beyond looks. And yet Lyra's attention was not on the city, it was on him. She wanted to understand how he saw the world, why he smiled at the little things, why he seemed unshaken by grandeur or fear. "This is different from what I expected," Lyra said quietly. "I thought humans would be timid or greedy or careless, yet you carry yourself with patience and calm." Ethan glanced at her, his smile small but sincere. "We have to. The universe is not kind to those who panic. We survive by thinking, by trying, by never giving up." Lyra considered this. She had always believed in the strength of her people, in their beauty and technology. Yet perhaps strength was not only in perfection or in advanced machines. It was in spirit, in courage, in the quiet ability to face the unknown without fear. The sun, or what passed for a sun in this alien sky, glinted off the crystal towers, casting long, colorful reflections across the city. Ethan took it in, noting the energy, the life, the balance. And Lyra, walking beside him, felt something stir inside, a hope, a curiosity, and a strange admiration for this human who seemed so ordinary, yet extraordinary. By the time they returned to the palace, Ethan had not only observed a new world, but he had also noticed the insecurities of a queen who seemed perfect to everyone else. And in that small, quiet understanding, something unspoken passed between them. A recognition that humans had a strength not measured in appearance or power, but in courage, insight, and heart. Lyra stood before him one last time in the chamber. "Perhaps I will learn to see myself differently, Captain Drake," she said softly. Ethan nodded, smiling quietly. Sometimes, seeing the world differently starts with a single step, or a single glance. You might be surprised at what you find. And in that moment, the Volari Queen, famed across the stars for her beauty, felt a flicker of hope. A strange human hope. Little did they both know. The universe was about to test their courage and intelligence in ways neither had imagined. And in that trial, human ingenuity, and perhaps the simple strength of heart, would shine brighter than any crystal tower, any glowing city, or any alien perfection. The next day, the sun, or what the Volari called the Twin Lights, rose slowly over the city of Volara, casting soft hues of teal and gold across the crystal towers. Captain Ethan Drake walked through the streets with Queen Lyra, noticing how the city pulsed with life. Citizens moved gracefully along glowing pathways, exchanging ideas, tending to gardens or repairing small hovering vehicles. It was a world that seemed to thrive effortlessly, yet Ethan's human eyes spotted small imperfections, tiny errors in energy flow, slight misalignments in structures that the Volari themselves might have ignored. Lyra floated beside him, her attention shifting between her people and this human who seemed so different from all visitors before. "I have always believed humans would be primitive," she admitted. "Yet you notice details that many of my own people ignore." Ethan smiled slightly. "Sometimes noticing what others overlook makes the difference between success and failure. Humans have to do it every day." Lyra considered his words. She had ruled Volara for centuries, Yet humans spoke with a simplicity that carried depth she had rarely encountered. There was no arrogance in Ethan's tone, only calm observation and quiet understanding. For reasons she could not explain, she felt drawn to this human's perspective. Their tour led them to a central plaza where Valari scholars gathered to exchange knowledge. Floating screens displayed glowing symbols, equations, and star maps. Humans could have been overwhelmed, but Ethan moved with ease, studying the data as if he understood it instinctively. These charts, he said, pointing at one display, show fluctuations in energy output across the city's grid. If adjusted slightly, you could increase efficiency by almost 10% without adding more energy. Lyra's eyes widened. She had seen many species attempt to understand Valari technology, yet none had succeeded at this level. The scholars around them murmured in surprise and admiration. "Impressive," Lyra said softly. "You understand our systems in ways most Valari cannot." Ethan shrugged. "Sometimes being an outsider helps. You notice what insiders take for granted." Lyra's curiosity grew. She had always been proud of her people's achievements, yet here was a human, small in stature and unassuming in manner, explaining improvements in ways that even the Valari advisors had overlooked. A part of her wondered if perhaps humans were more capable than she had assumed. However, not everyone shared Lyra's growing admiration. The palace advisors, tall and imposing figures with shimmering wings, exchanged worried glances. "Your Highness," one of them whispered, "this human is unpredictable. His methods are untested. We cannot rely on him." Another advisor added, "Humans are emotional. They act without understanding our ways. It is dangerous to place trust in them." Lyra ignored them, though a small part of doubt tugged at her mind. Humans were certainly different. Ethan's calm demeanor, however, reassured her. He did not rush, he did not boast, and he did not act arrogantly. There was an honesty in him that could not be denied. Their next stop was the Valari Gardens. Vast fields of floating flora drifted in the air, glowing softly with bioluminescence. Valari workers carefully tended to the plants, ensuring every leaf received the perfect energy pulse. Ethan moved slowly, observing. He bent down to examine one flower closely, noting its structure. "Your gardens are beautiful," he said, "but some of these plants could survive with slightly less energy. You might redirect power elsewhere without harming them." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "You notice everything," Ethan shrugged. "Humans have to. Sometimes survival depends on it." The Queen studied him, intrigued. Here was a human, far from home, offering insight without pride or expectation. It was a quality Valari found rare. And yet, even as she admired him, her mind drifted back to her earlier thought. "Why do I see myself as ugly when everyone calls me beautiful?" Ethan's presence, simple yet confident, reminded her that perception was personal. Perhaps her people's definition of beauty was not the only one that mattered. Perhaps seeing herself through honest eyes like Ethan's could help her feel at ease. As they continued their walk, a sudden alarm rang across the city. Bright red signals flashed in the sky above, and a low hum of panic echoed through the streets. Citizens paused, glancing nervously at the towers and the glowing pathways. "What is happening?" Ethan asked calmly, though inside his mind raced. Lyra's expression hardened. "It seems there is a disturbance at the northern energy hub. Some fluctuation, possibly caused by an external interference." The palace advisors rushed forward, discussing possible threats. Most were tense, whispering fears of sabotage or enemy attacks. Ethan noticed the fear in their eyes, the way they relied solely on tradition and protocol instead of thinking creatively. "May I see this disturbance?" he asked. Lyra hesitated for a moment. "Very well, but do not underestimate its danger. Humans are fragile compared to our defenses." Ethan nodded. "Perhaps. But humans also adapt." At the northern hub, the energy flow was indeed irregular. A few minor sparks flickered dangerously, and the machinery hummed with unstable energy. Valari engineers worked frantically, unsure how to stabilize the system. Ethan stepped forward. "Stop for a moment," he said. The engineers looked at him in surprise, but he continued. "The energy is too high in one area and too low in another. Redistribute it gradually, not all at once. Focus on balance, not force." Slowly, carefully, the engineers followed his instructions. The energy levels began to stabilize, the sparks faded, and the hum became steady. The immediate danger passed. Lyra watched, amazed. "You saved them," Ethan shrugged lightly. "I did what made sense. Sometimes simplicity works better than complexity." The palace advisors were stunned. They whispered among themselves, unsure how to react. The human had succeeded where their elaborate calculations had failed. For Lyra, it was a revelation. Humans were not weak. They did not possess the perfection of the Velari, yet they had a unique strength, intuition, creativity, and the ability to adapt in ways that even the most advanced technology could not predict. Later, as the city returned to its usual rhythm, Lyra walked beside Ethan in silence. "I have led for many cycles," she admitted quietly, "and yet I have often doubted myself. I have relied on perfection, on protocol, on what is expected. But you show me there is another way, another strength." Ethan smiled gently. "Every leader needs perspective, Your Highness. Sometimes it comes from the most unexpected place." Lyra looked at him thoughtfully. She remembered her earlier self-reflection, her doubts about her appearance, her fear of inadequacy, and realized that strength was not about looks or perfection. It was about courage, wisdom, and resilience. And humans, she thought, seem to possess these qualities in abundance. "Perhaps I have judged humans too quickly," she said softly. "Your kind is not only clever but brave. You notice what others overlook. You see truth where others see illusion." Ethan's calm demeanor never wavered. "We do what we must, and sometimes we simply survive by thinking differently." Lyra's attention returned to the city, observing citizens working together, sharing knowledge and solving problems. The Velari were advanced, yes, but perhaps they had lost something simple yet powerful. The ingenuity that humans brought naturally. For the first time, Lyra felt a genuine curiosity about humanity. Not just their weaknesses or differences, but their potential, their spirit, their courage. She wanted to understand more, to learn from them, and perhaps to see her own people in a new light. And as they walked together through the glowing streets, Ethan smiled quietly to himself. Humans might be far from home, fragile in some ways and underestimated by many species across the galaxy. But here, on Valara, they were beginning to show a power that no crystal tower or advanced technology could match. The power of ingenuity, courage, and heart. Lyra, the Velari queen, continued to watch him. She could not explain why, but she felt that something remarkable had begun. A partnership, a learning, and perhaps a friendship that might change the course of her world forever. The twin lights rose higher, casting long reflections across the city, and in those reflections Lyra thought she could see not only the beauty of Valara, but also the quiet, unassuming brilliance of a human who might be more extraordinary than she had ever imagined. The calm of Valara's twin lights was shattered the next morning. Red warning signals streaked across the sky, and a low, vibrating hum ran through the city. Citizens paused mid-task, their glowing eyes wide with alarm. From the horizon, enormous ships appeared, dark and angular, cutting through the soft teal sky. They belonged to the Zorvans, a rival alien species known across the galaxy for their ruthlessness and advanced weaponry. Queen Lyra stood atop the palace terrace, her hands gripping the crystal railing. Her mind raced. She had faced crises before, but never one of this scale. The Velari military was strong, yet the Zorvans had always been a threat beyond their ability to handle easily. And now, with the attack imminent, every moment counted. Ethan stood beside her, calm as ever. He had watched the approaching fleet and noted their formation, the speed of their vessels, and the direction of attack. While the Velari advisors panicked, he observed quietly, calculating possibilities. "Their ships are heavily armed," Lyra said, her voice firm but tense. "They will target the central power hub first. If it falls, the city will be defenseless." Ethan nodded. "Then we need to do something unexpected. Something they won't predict." The advisors turned sharply at his words, their wings fluttering in agitation. "Your Highness, we cannot rely on a human to plan our defense," one of them exclaimed. "It is too dangerous." "We have centuries of experience. Our strategies have always worked." Lyra raised a hand, silencing them. She had learned something from Ethan already. Humans did not always follow the rules of others, yet their perspective often revealed solutions that logic alone could not. She looked at Ethan. "What do you suggest?" Ethan pointed to the city map displayed on a floating crystal panel. "Instead of defending the power hub directly, we create decoy energy fields around it. Make them appear stronger, but fragile in certain areas. Then we lure the Zorvans into focusing their attack on the decoys while our main forces strike from unexpected angles." The advisors gasped. Such an unorthodox strategy went against every Velari principle. It is risky, one whispered. If we fail, the city could be destroyed. True, Ethan said calmly, but the unexpected often surprises the enemy. Humans have survived countless dangers by thinking differently. You might be amazed at what we can do with creativity and courage. Lyra studied him. There was logic in his words, even if the method seemed strange. We will follow your plan, she declared, ignoring the murmurs of discontent. Prepare the decoys. Position our forces where he suggests. Within the hour, the Volari worked under Ethan's guidance. Energy fields shifted. Holographic projections created illusions of defenses, and smaller ships were moved to mimic a fragile but tempting target. Citizens were evacuated to safe zones, while the military prepared quietly, waiting for the Zorvans to make the first move. As night fell, the enemy fleet closed in. The Zorvans fired their first salvo, aiming directly at the decoy hubs. Explosions lit the sky, but the real power hub remained untouched. Volari ships, hidden behind energy fields, launched their counterattack with precision, striking the enemy at their weakest points. Ethan directed the operations alongside Lyra, pointing out weak points in enemy formations and suggesting maneuvers. The Volari had not fought like this before. Their movements were precise yet unpredictable, guided by human intuition as much as by their own technology. From the palace terrace, Lyra observed Ethan calmly giving orders, adjusting strategies, and noticing details that even seasoned generals overlooked. There was a confidence in him that inspired others, and she realized that humans possessed something the Volari had long forgotten: adaptability. During a particularly intense moment, one of the Zorvan capital ships broke through the decoys and headed straight for the main city core. Volari weapons struggled to slow it down. Ethan acted immediately. Redirect the plasma currents from the northern conduits, he shouted. Focus them on the approach path. Do not overload, just guide it into their shields. Lyra hesitated, unsure if the suggestion would work. But she saw the determination in his eyes and the logic in his voice. She nodded and gave the command. Slowly, the redirected energy created a barrier, deflecting the Zorvan ship and causing it to veer off course, crashing harmlessly into the ocean outside the city. The battle raged for hours. Volari ships maneuvered with unexpected strategy, often breaking traditional formations in favor of flexible, adaptive attacks guided by Ethan's observations. Citizens watched in awe as their city survived on both advanced technology and human ingenuity. By dawn, the Zorvan fleet began retreating. They had underestimated the Volari, but more importantly, they had underestimated the humans standing calmly in their midst. The city was battered but intact, thanks to the combination of Volari power and human strategy. After the battle, the palace courtyard filled with survivors and soldiers. The Volari cheered, but many eyes turned toward Ethan. Here was a human, small, unassuming, and yet instrumental in saving their home. Lyra stepped forward, her expression serious but proud. You have done something remarkable, she said, not just in saving the city, but in showing us that strength comes in many forms. Ethan shook his head slightly. I only did what made sense. Your people are capable, intelligent, and brave. I simply pointed out possibilities you hadn't considered. One of the palace advisors muttered under his breath. Perhaps humans are not as weak as we believed. Lyra noticed the comment but chose not to respond. She was more concerned with what she had learned. She had seen courage, intelligence, and leadership in someone she had considered fragile and inferior. The realization stirred something deep inside her. Humans were underestimated across the galaxy, yet they possessed qualities the Volari had not fully appreciated. Later, in the quiet of the palace, Lyra walked with Ethan through the ruined sections of the city. Crystal shards glimmered faintly under the rising twin lights, and citizens were already beginning to repair damaged areas. You think humans are fragile, she said softly, yet you survived dangers that would overwhelm us. Why? Ethan smiled gently. Because we have to. Humans adapt. We think differently, and when the odds are against us, we find solutions that others overlook. It's not always strength or speed, it's creativity and courage. Lyra paused, reflecting on his words. She had spent centuries relying on tradition and perfection, believing that rules and appearances defined strength. But she had witnessed a human transform a desperate situation into a victory. Perhaps the universe had been teaching her a lesson she had ignored, that intelligence, bravery, and quick thinking often outweighed perfection or raw power. "You inspire confidence," Lyra said quietly, almost as if speaking to herself.
Even in the face of fear, you remain calm. It
changes how I see everything." Ethan's smile remained gentle. Humans often appear ordinary, but ordinary is not the same as powerless. Sometimes the smallest actions, the quietest decisions, make the biggest difference. Lyra watched him, feeling a sense of respect she had never given another being. She had met diplomats, generals, scholars, and scientists, yet none had demonstrated the calm, unshakable courage of this human. And in that moment, she realized something extraordinary. The galaxy had underestimated humans. Perhaps they always had. "Your presence here," Lyra said finally, "is more valuable than I ever imagined. Not for your strength or your technology or even your skill, but for your mind, your insight, and your courage." Ethan inclined his head. "Then perhaps we both learned something today. You learned that humans are not as fragile as they seem, and I learned that even the most advanced civilizations can grow when they see the world differently." Lyra nodded, a quiet smile forming. She felt something she had not experienced in centuries: hope, not just for herself but for her people. And as she looked over the city, beginning to repair and rebuild, she knew that the future would be brighter, not because the Volari were perfect, but because they had learned to see value in the most unexpected of allies. The twin lights rose fully, bathing the city in a warm glow. And for the first time, Lyra thought that perhaps the most extraordinary things in the universe were not perfection or power, but the courage, ingenuity, and heart of a human standing quietly beside her. The city of Valara had quieted after the Zorvan attack, but peace was fragile. Though the enemy fleet had retreated, small skirmishes still flared at the outskirts and the city's defenses were not yet fully repaired. Queen Lyra walked alongside Captain Ethan Drake through the palace corridors, her mind heavy with responsibility. She had faced many challenges before, yet she had never relied on an outsider so directly in her leadership. "You have changed the way we see defense, Ethan," Lyra said quietly. "The advisors are still hesitant, but the people, they look at you differently." Ethan nodded, keeping his usual calm demeanor. "Humans learn from everything we experience. We adapt, and we find solutions in ways others might not see immediately. You have talented people here, Lyra, and when guided correctly, they can do extraordinary things." Lyra stopped walking and looked at him carefully. "Do you think I have led my people well?" Ethan smiled softly. "You have always done your best. Strength is not about being perfect, it is about action. You acted when others might have hesitated, and that matters more than you realize." For the first time, Lyra felt a sense of pride that did not depend on her appearance or titles. She had always worried about her perceived flaws, thinking they might limit her leadership. But standing here with Ethan, she realized her worth was measured in her courage, her wisdom, and her care for her people. The calm did not last long. A report arrived from the northern outpost. A Zorvan scout fleet had returned, smaller and faster, attempting to probe Valara's defenses. This time the danger was stealthier, harder to detect, and even more unpredictable. Lyra's heart sank, but she took a deep breath. "We cannot let them disrupt the city again. We must act quickly." Ethan studied the report. "We should not just defend. We must anticipate their movements, predict what they think we will do, and strike before they realize it." Lyra nodded. "Then we will act together." The next hours were a whirlwind of preparation. Volari engineers and soldiers moved under Ethan's guidance, setting traps, reinforcing shields, and creating holographic decoys. Unlike the first attack, this plan was more intricate, relying not only on technology but on strategy, timing, and human intuition. During the preparations, Lyra walked among her people, quietly observing their efforts. Soldiers who had been fearful now moved with confidence, inspired by the calm determination of the human who stood among them. Engineers whispered to each other about the cleverness of Ethan's suggestions, realizing that this outsider brought perspectives they had never considered. "You see them differently," Lyra said softly to Ethan. As they watched the preparations, Ethan nodded. "Sometimes when you are too close to a problem, you miss the simple solutions. Humans have a way of looking at things from an unexpected angle." Lyra smiled faintly. There was a lesson in that for her as well. As a queen, she had to see not just what was visible, but what was possible. She had relied on tradition for so long, Yet the humans showed her that courage and creativity could redefine outcomes. Night fell again, and the Zorvan scout fleet emerged. Silent and swift, their ships glided toward Valara, expecting easy reconnaissance. Instead, they found themselves navigating a labyrinth of holographic projections, redirected energy streams, and unexpected Valari patrols. Ethan directed the defense with quiet authority. Do not attack until they enter the trap zones. Focus on coordination, not force. Remember, efficiency matters more than power. Lyra watched him, amazed at his composure. Even under pressure, Ethan remained calm, analyzing each movement, predicting enemy behavior, and giving clear, precise instructions. The Valari had never experienced such calculated guidance before. When the Zorvans entered the trap zones, the Valari forces struck with precision. Energy nets immobilized several ships, while other vessels were guided into containment fields. The Zorvans tried to regroup, but Ethan had anticipated every move. Every escape route was monitored, every strategy countered. During the battle, one of the Zorvan ships broke through and headed directly toward the palace. Panic rose among the defenders. Lyra's heart pounded, but Ethan did not flinch. Activate the layered shields, he ordered. Do not overcharge. Use redirection channels to guide it away. Lyra followed his command, feeling a strange calm settle over her. The shields activated, energy flows redirected the enemy ship, and it crashed safely into an uninhabited area. The battle continued through the night, and by dawn, the scout fleet had been neutralized. The city had survived with minimal damage. The people cheered, but their eyes turned toward Ethan and Lyra. Together they had faced danger and emerged victorious. Lyra felt a new confidence within her. She had led her people in a way she had never imagined possible, guided not only by her own wisdom, but also by the insight of someone from another world. She realized that leadership was not about perfection, but about adaptability, courage, and collaboration. Later, in the palace garden, Lyra and Ethan walked in silence. The air was cool, the bioluminescent plants glowing softly under the twin lights. The city was alive around them, citizens repairing, rebuilding, and working together. You inspire confidence, Lyra said quietly. Not only in the soldiers and engineers, but in me as well. Ethan smiled. Sometimes it just takes seeing a situation from a different perspective. Humans often notice possibilities that others overlook. You led bravely because you allowed yourself to see things differently today. Lyra considered his words. She had always feared her own doubts, her insecurities, and her limitations. But the events of the past days had shown her that courage was not about being fearless. It was about acting despite fear, and trusting in one's mind and heart. I have always worried about how I appear, she admitted. I thought my appearance, my image defined my worth, but now I see that strength, wisdom, and courage matter more. Ethan nodded. True beauty and leadership are measured in actions, not appearances. Humans understand this. We see potential where others see flaws. Lyra looked at him thoughtfully. She realized that this human, small and unassuming, had changed the way she saw her own people and herself. She had underestimated humans before, judging them by their physical strength and appearance, but now she understood their true power. Intelligence, creativity, and resilience. You are extraordinary, Lyra said softly. Not for your looks or your strength or even your technology, but for your mind, your courage, and your heart. Ethan's gentle smile did not change. Perhaps we both learned something today. You see the value of a different perspective, and I see the incredible spirit of your people. Leadership is not about being perfect. It's about inspiring others to be their best. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest, a new sense of hope. She had been burdened with expectations for centuries, yet here was a human showing her that real strength came from understanding, creativity, and courage. For the first time, she felt free, not from her duties, but from her own doubts. The city of Valara began to rebuild with renewed energy. Citizens worked together, guided by the strategies Ethan had taught them and inspired by the bravery of their queen. The Valari had survived an enemy attack stronger and smarter than ever before. And Lyra, once insecure and doubtful, now stood with a confidence born not of perfection but of action and courage. As the twin lights rose fully over the city, Lyra turned to Ethan. I think I am beginning to understand. Humans are not just clever. They are brave, adaptable, and unafraid to face the unknown. Perhaps this is why the universe allows them to survive where others fail. Ethan's calm smile was all the answer she needed. Together, they had faced the threat, inspired the people, and learned lessons that would carry far beyond this battle. And Lyra knew that with humans by her side, she could face any challenge the galaxy might send her way. The city of Valara had survived, and the morning air was crisp and calm. The twin lights rose over the crystal towers, reflecting off the buildings and bathing the city in soft teal and gold hues. Citizens moved through the streets, repairing damage from the Zorvan attacks and sharing stories of courage and cleverness. The mood was hopeful, and the energy of resilience filled every corner. Queen Lyra walked with Captain Ethan Drake through the main plaza. She had rarely felt such calm after a battle. Her people were safe, the city was intact, and for the first time in her long life, she felt a sense of genuine pride, not for her appearance, but for her actions and the actions of those she led. "You have changed everything," Lyra said quietly. "Not only the city's defenses, but the way my people see themselves." "And me," Ethan smiled. "You did the hard work. I only suggested ways you could think differently. Humans often notice possibilities that others overlook, but leadership always comes from within." Lyra looked at him thoughtfully. She had spent centuries judging herself by the standards of her people, by perfection and image. Yet here was a human, calm and wise, showing her that courage, creativity, and heart were far more important. "Perhaps humans are the most remarkable creatures I have ever met," Lyra admitted softly. "Not because of your strength or skill, but because of your mind and your spirit." Ethan's smile widened just slightly. "Perhaps we are. But you have learned something as well. You led with courage, inspired your people, and trusted in new ideas. That is extraordinary, too." The palace advisors approached, still cautious but visibly impressed. Many whispered among themselves, noting how the human had guided their defenses with insight and calm. Others simply stared in awe, realizing that humans were not weak, fragile, or inferior. They were intelligent, adaptable, and brave. Lyra addressed them all. "We survived because we acted together, combining the strength of our people with the insight of someone who sees the world differently. This is a lesson I hope we will carry forward." The advisors nodded slowly, acknowledging that their perspective had changed. Humans, they realized, brought qualities that even the most advanced Valari could not replicate: creativity, courage, and the ability to adapt in unexpected ways. Later, Lyra led Ethan to the highest terrace of the palace. From there, the city stretched like a living crystal, glowing softly under the twin lights. The rivers of energy that powered Valara flowed smoothly again, humming a gentle rhythm that spoke of life, resilience, and hope. "You have taught me more than I ever expected," Lyra said. "About humans, about leadership, and even about myself. Perhaps beauty is not what the eyes see, but what the heart and mind recognize." Ethan's smile was quiet, calm, and patient. "Humans see value in many things, not just appearances. We adapt, we create, we endure. Perhaps the universe gave us that gift so we could survive and help others when needed." Lyra considered his words. She had always measured herself by the reflection in the crystal panels, judging her appearance and perfection. But now she realized that true worth came from action, courage, and wisdom. Appearance was secondary. It was the choices she made, the people she inspired, and the courage she showed that mattered. A ceremony was held in the palace courtyard that evening. Citizens, soldiers, and advisors gathered to honor the survival of Valara and the bravery displayed during the attacks. Lyra presented a ceremonial gift to Ethan, a small crystal, carved with patterns that represented the unity of Valara and the human spirit. "This," she said, "represents not just what you have done for our city, but what you have taught me and my people. You have reminded us that courage, wisdom, and creativity define true greatness, and perhaps humans are more beautiful than we realized, not for how they look, but for what they bring to the universe." Ethan accepted the crystal humbly. "I am honored, Your Highness, but the real credit goes to your leadership and your people. I only showed a few possibilities. You and your people made them real." Lyra smiled, a genuine warmth in her expression. "Then perhaps this is a new beginning, for Valara, and for understanding between our worlds." As the celebration continued, Ethan observed the people around him. He noticed their smiles, their renewed energy, and the way they worked together to rebuild what had been damaged. It was a reminder of what humans often brought to the galaxy: collaboration, ingenuity, and hope. Lyra stood beside him once more, watching the glowing city. "I have learned something important," she said softly. "Humans are not perfect, yet they possess a strength that perfection cannot create. Courage, intelligence, and heart, they can change the course of events when nothing else can." Ethan nodded. "Yes, and your people have learned as well. They have seen that strength is not just in power or appearance, but in thinking, acting, and believing." Lyra's expression grew thoughtful. "Perhaps I should see myself differently, too. Not as someone defined by perfection, but as someone capable, brave, and wise. That is real beauty." Ethan's smile, quiet but knowing, seemed to acknowledge her realization. True beauty comes from what you do and how you inspire others. It is not measured by appearance or perfection. You have shown that clearly today. As the twin lights set, casting long reflections across the crystal towers, Valara's citizens continued their work, inspired and united. They had survived an enemy attack, learned new strategies, and discovered the value of human ingenuity. They had learned that courage, creativity, and determination could overcome fear, technology, and appearances. Lyra walked with Ethan to a quiet garden where bioluminescent plants glowed softly under the night sky. The air was still, filled with the scent of alien flowers and the soft hum of energy flowing through the city. She turned to him, her expression sincere. "Captain Drake," she said softly, "you have shown me that humans are extraordinary, not for what they look like or how strong they are, but for how they think, how they act, and how they face the unknown. I am grateful to have met you." Ethan inclined his head. "And I am grateful to have met you, Your Highness. You reminded me that leadership, courage, and wisdom are universal, not limited to one species. Humans have a lot to learn, but we also have much to share." Lyra smiled, a mixture of warmth and understanding in her eyes. "Perhaps our worlds can learn from each other. Perhaps humans and Valari together can face anything the galaxy sends our way." Ethan's calm smile reflected agreement. "I believe that. Together we are stronger, and perhaps that is the true lesson of survival and growth. Understanding, collaboration, and courage." As they stood there, overlooking the city that had survived against all odds, Lyra felt a sense of peace she had never known. She had learned to see beyond appearances, to trust her own strength, and to value qualities that transcended perfection. And she had learned to respect humans in a way she had never expected, a species small in stature, fragile in appearance, yet extraordinary in spirit. The twin lights of Valara cast a final glow across the crystal towers. Citizens continued to work, laugh, and rebuild, carrying with them the lessons of courage, ingenuity, and resilience. And in that glow, a quiet truth shone clearly. Humans were not perfect, but they were remarkable. Not for what they looked like, but for what they brought to the universe. Heart, mind, and courage that could change the course of worlds. Lyra looked at Ethan one last time before he prepared to depart. Perhaps one day humans and Valari will face the stars together, as equals, learning from each other and protecting the galaxy. "You have given us hope." Ethan smiled quietly, his calm presence as reassuring as ever. "Then that is a future worth striving for, and I will be glad to stand beside you whenever needed, Your Highness." As Ethan departed from Valara, the city shimmered behind him, alive, resilient, and full of potential. Lyra, now confident in herself and her people, watched the horizon with hope. She had learned that true strength, beauty, and leadership were not measured by appearance or perfection, but by courage, intelligence, and heart. And in that understanding, humans had earned not only respect but admiration, a reminder to the galaxy that even the smallest, most underestimated beings could shine brightest when faced with challenges, uncertainty, and the unknown.